Hi there, my name is Jake Wynn. I'm the program coordinator here at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine. And today we're going to take a look at some artifacts from Clara Barton, who made a career for herself as a humanitarian during the Civil War by assisting wounded men on the battlefield and taking that experience eventually to the American Red Cross. We're going to look at some of the artifacts that were found in her Civil War era apartment in Washington, D.C. So in 1996, a government employee named Richard Lyons was inspecting a building in Washington, D.C. on 7th Street, which was about to be torn down. While he's in the space, he feels a tap on his shoulder. He turns around and looks up to see a letter addressed to a Mr. Edward Shaw. He climbs up a ladder to a crawl space up on the top, essentially an attic, and he reaches over and finds a sign with the name of Clara Barton. What that revealed was an attic filled with artifacts, just like this shipping crate here addressed to Miss Clara H. Barton on 7th Street in Washington, D.C. Clara Barton is one of the first female employees of the federal government. She begins working in Washington for the patent office in the 1850s. So she's living in this apartment, in this boarding house on 7th Street in Washington. She is essentially using her office as her headquarters. She is compiling supplies, so much so that it fills her entire room, and she actually has to start leasing out space in other places. Eventually, she fills up 3 entire warehouses with supplies for Union troops. In a crate like this, you would have found medical supplies, things like bandages, alcohol. You would have found tourniquets. You would have found anything that a Union doctor or a Union surgeon would have needed out on the battlefield. She also brought along food. She brought along extra clothing. And this is really important because at this point in the war, in September of 1862, when she goes out onto the battlefield, the Army itself was having a hard time of supplying its field hospitals. And so she was acting to assist the Union Army's medical department and bring along medical supplies that they may be missing, and bringing them right to the battlefield. If you think about it, this crate represents a really incredible story from the American Civil War. So this would have been shipped from somewhere in Boston or New York City to Washington, D.C. So this crate filled with supplies is being sent from those cities down to Washington, D.C., arrives at a wharf in Washington, is put onto a wagon, carried across the city to this office and boarding house on 7th Street in D.C. And then from there on, those supplies are going to go out onto the battlefield. So one of the most fascinating aspects of Clara Barton's work during and immediately after the Civil War is her work with the Missing Soldiers Office. So not only is she out on the battlefield nursing the wounded, but she's also caring about all of those soldiers who never came home. What she finds during her work during the Civil War is that many of these families have no closure. This is a time before many soldiers are wearing any kind of formal identification, and so many soldiers go missing and no one knows what happened to them. A huge group of those that Clara Barton is looking for actually were buried at Andersonville Prison. And this list, behind me here, this book is a list of those Union prisoners that died at Andersonville. Their names, their regiments, and the grave number where they are buried. This list was compiled by Dorrance Atwater, a Union prisoner of war inside Andersonville. He kept a secret list of all of those burials at the cemetery at Andersonville, and he brought it to Clara Barton when he escaped. And between the two of them, they published this list along with Clara Barton's findings, and they helped to bring a closure to many grieving Union families.